Hey, Jen Cave here with a tutorial on Navmeshing. Today I'm going to cover basics as well as world cell edits and also Navmeshing an object that you have created so it can be used and placed down in workshop mode and the NPCs will be able to walk on it, such as floors or things like that. I'll also talk about fixing deleted nav meshes. So today we're going to use two programs, Fallout 4 Edit as well as Creation Kit. In Creation Kit, I have loaded up this is Taffington Boathouse, and it's not my mod. This is just the basic location mod because it has a couple of features like stairs that I will show you how to nav mesh. Um, One of the things that you definitely want to familiarize yourself with is the nav mesh hotkey right here. There's also this pull down menu that gives you a lot more options. But for the most part, what you're going to use is just the nav mesh mode. One thing that you want to do when you are editing world cells is to use collision geometry when you are nav meshing. So let's go ahead and turn that on. This allows you to see the surface of the ground so that you can put down nav meshing on uneven and even ground, and the nav mesh will always be on top of the ground and not sunk beneath or floating above. This will also show the collision geometry on the stairs so that you can properly place your nav mesh so that the NPCs will use it properly. So we'll go ahead and turn on the nav mesh function. Now, as you can see, there are different views up here. Let's go over these really quick. These here allow you to select by triangle. So I can select this triangle, that one, but I can't select the vertices or the lines. This function only allows me to select the vertices, but not the lines or the triangles. I can drag and select to select more of those vertices if I want. I suggest you don't use drag and select when you have multiple ones selected, otherwise you're just going to drag your triangles and lines around. This option allows you to just select the lines, and that is useful. They're all useful for different purposes. Okay, so most of the time when you're nav meshing, you want to use all three. Just it's easiest to be able to grab whatever it is that you want to grab. There are also view modes. This is standard. This is over what you would see the nav mesh sits on top of. So you can see it sits on top of the surface here. You can see it's underneath the surface here. On roads, it's difficult because you have to get it right on top of the collision points in order to have it rest directly on top. These green lines are cell borders. Just FYI, this is actually your workshop border. I'm going to go ahead and turn that thing off. There we go. So you can see the size of the cell. So we're going to nav mesh this cell, work on nav meshing this cell just to familiarize yourself with it, and then I'll do more advanced things in another one of my mods because I'm working on that one. Okay, this shows all of the nav mesh. You can see through buildings. I don't suggest that you nav mesh in this mode because you can accidentally grab a line or a vertices underneath the one that you're supposed to be working on. And if you notice, when you cross cell boundaries in nav mesh mode, it kind of has a hesitation, and sometimes it actually skips back to the middle. Just be patient. This mode only shows the nav mesh, period. So you can't see any of the buildings or the landscape or anything like that. These pink ones are pre-cuts so that when you're in workshop mode, you can scrap the item, and then these nav meshes will be freed up underneath so the NPCs can walk on them. I will show you how to create new ones if you're building a new location or if you're trying to fix current locations or things like that. So most of the time when you nav mesh, you want to nav mesh in this mode here. There are different collision types. The blue is generally something that's movable, um, and the red is immovable objects, and these also show the collision on top. Okay, so this is testing Navmesh. You can test your Navmesh to make sure that NPCs can work on it. Generally, if you don't have any errors, your Navmesh is going to work fine. Balance for optimization. I don't use this. I hand Navmesh everything, so I don't like to use that function at all. Find current cover edges. Yes, this is something that you're going to want to use before finalizing. This finalizes the current cell. This opens the Navmesh generation dialog, and this one opens the advanced Navmesh generation dialog. I do not recommend using either Havoc-based or Recast-based generation, and that's because it generally makes more of a mess than you want, and then you have to clean it up by hand. So it's just always easier and cleaner to do it by hand. These options here, pre-cut all scrappables, I don't suggest using because it tends to make a mess. Lots of little vertices that are not necessary. Link all scrappables, I don't use that. I like to hand link mine just because of the fact that something might not be scrappable, but I want it to be. It's a scrappable through a scrapping program, so I want to make sure that I get all of them. Create pre-cuts for selection. You can use that option to, if I wanted to select that cow and then create, I just do these things by hand. Okay, link pre-cuts for selection is something that you're definitely going to use, and that is because I will show you, let's say if we want to link a chair up here because we're going to clear out the links, we want to definitely do that. Okay, I'm not going to get into drawing covers or tunnels or waypoints. In my other video I already covered moving selection to separate Navmesh, but you don't necessarily need to do that anymore to not worry about deleted Navmeshes. Okay, so let's continue on the bar. This is flood fill, which means if I have this particular Navmesh, and let me show you here, let me get this down and out of the way. Okay, so if you can see right down here, this particular Navmesh has the Navmesh ID of 00129A1B. If I want to know all of the Navmeshes that belong to this particular ID, I can do this, flood fill. And that will show me all of the Navmeshes that belong to this particular Navmesh. Another way of selecting a Navmesh, which this cell only has one, is to double click on it, and then it will give you an overhead view of it. So, because multiple cells generally have multiple Navmeshes in them, this is one of those unique ones that only has one, I guess. So then there is inverse flood fill, which highlights the same way as flood fill, but it highlights any of the Navmeshes that don't belong to that particular one. It reverses that. This is the delete selected object. If you want to delete a particular Navmesh, you can do so. You can deselect, it shows you're not selecting, or cut it. Find triangle is useful if you have an error. In this cell, you have an error in your Navmesh and you need to find it. It will give you the little dialog that shows you, and this one doesn't have any particular Navmesh errors in it because I haven't done anything yet to it. So what you would do is you would do next warning, and it would go to that particular one. Okay, other functions. Create triangle or quad, that's just the A key. Drop vertices, that's also the F key. Edge rotate, I don't use that very much. Edit cover for edge, I don't edit cover very much. It tends to update itself. And merge vertices, this is useful if you've accidentally dropped a vertice in and you want to get rid of the extra one. Let's say I accidentally put this one in and I don't want it in there. So I'm going to hold down the control key, click this one, and what this does is it brings it to whichever first one that you selected, it brings it over to that one. So you can see it will bring them into that one. Okay? Toggle water. There are different types of nav mesh. As you can see, there's water nav mesh. This is mainly for animals or NPCs that don't swim. It has nothing to do with whether or not your companion can follow you, because most companions, or all of the companions that I know of, can swim, or at least travel over top of water. I think Deathclaws can't swim, so this lets Deathclaws know that they can't follow you. And then, so when you're nav meshing underwater, you definitely want to use that. And it's definitely for deep water. It's not for shallow creeks. See, this is water here, but it's very shallow water, so it's not marked as deep water. So a Deathclaw could follow you around the edges there. This is preferred pathing, which is utilized on roads, and it looks different than regular nav mesh because it's orange, or gold. Some people call it gold. I can set this particular triangle to not be preferred by just doing that, and I can reset it by doing that. That's how you set preferred pathing, and that's so that your NPCs will always use the path that you want them to use when traveling from one point to another point. Okay, so now that we've got the basics out of the way, you can clear a cell and redo a cell fairly easy. Even though I am doing something that's called deleting nav meshes, it's not necessarily going to show up as deleted. You need to at least keep one triangle from the nav mesh without deleting it. And then you can reuse that nav mesh to triangle to redo the entire cell if you want. So I'm going to flood fill and select all. I'm going to hit Control key and deselect that particular triangle. I'm going to delete the rest of them. I hit by just hitting the delete key. Okay, so let's just say that this is all I want to do with this particular cell. There's a gigantic building here or something or other. So I'm going to go ahead and actually put this on top of the ground. Put that one right here. I'm just hitting F key to bring it to the surface of the ground. And as you can see, with this collision geometry, it actually follows the surface of the ground. So if you can see this yellow line here, you can safely nav mesh like here. Let's see. Okay, let's just go back to basic again. Basics, making vertices. All you do is right click. You can right click, right click, right click. Those are all vertices. Okay, in order to make a triangle, you select two or create two vertices and hold the Control key down, right click, there you go. If you're making one from scratch, right click, right click, right click, there you go. You can also click these three here, and there's no triangle. I'm just going to hit the A key and to make a triangle there. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to decide that that's all the nav mesh that I want to do in this particular cell. And I'm going to update the cover. And then I'm going to finalize this cell. You can see down here it's creating them. Let's see if we get any nav mesh errors, even though this is not connected to any other nav mesh. Let's see. So I'm going to have the warnings. I clear that to clear out the other stuff. Check nav meshes. There are no errors in this nav mesh. Okay. So we're going to save this. And since it's a tutorial, I'm just going to call it tutorial. How cool is that? And let's see, we'll do it nav mesh. Nav mesh tutorial. Save. Okay. And while it does this, it's going to create the editor nav meshes. And I'm going to pause this video really quick. I'm going to unload this particular file so I can look at it in Fallout 4 Edit. I'm going to right click and select None. Since it's brand new, it's going to be down here. Okay, so I'm going to apply filter for cleaning. I'm going to remove identical to master records and undelete and disable. It says none, which it would say skipping if there was deleted Navmesh. So we're going to look at this as the cell that we were in, and the only information in here is Navmesh. As you can see, it shows up as compressed, not deleted. So that shows you that you can redo an entire cell if you want, and it doesn't show as deleted. You just need to make sure that you keep at least one triangle from whichever cell or whichever Navmesh ID. So we're going to go ahead and close that. Say OK, because it cleaned that record. That's fine. We're going to go back to Creation Kit. We're going to reload that particular file, and I will show you how to Navmesh. We're going to set that as active file. Okay, here we are back in Taffington Boathouse. Our collision geometry is still on, and that's because I didn't actually close Creation Kit. If you were to close Creation Kit, you'd have to turn it back on again. As you can see, it sometimes comes in and out of focus, the lines there. So we're going to go ahead and turn back on our Navmesh generation. And you can see that we have our little squares here. So what we're going to do is just Navmesh into the house and up the stairs so that you know how to Navmesh stairs. And then I will show you how to connect Navmeshing over on borders. And I might do that on a different location because that's a fair amount of Navmeshing. So when you want to Navmesh cells like this, if it's a flat surface like these decks here, you want to make the triangles as big as possible. And you generally want to make the triangles as big as possible anyway. You don't want these little tiny sliver things at all. They're very difficult for the NPCs to process. And it looks like this particular Navmesh right there is floating. So, I mean, this is vanilla Navmeshing. This is Bethesda's work. And it works okay, but that's not something that you really want to do. The problem is some of these little bushes and sticks actually have collision. So when I Navmesh, I toggle the grass off, and generally my areas are clear anyway. You can drag the vertices down, you know, if it sits on top, but it's easier for me to just either here, let me show you really quick. You can select that bush and you hit the number 1 twice. It makes them not have collision as well as not be visible, so that it makes it easier for you to Navmesh. Okay, so let's say that's enough. We're going to go back to this. Okay, so this is the cell here, or this little square here has got one of those uneven ground vertices right here. We're going to select those two. And if I were to go this way, you can see it's underneath the ground. So we're going to delete that. We don't want that. We want it to sit on top of the ground. So we're going to go to here. Okay. Now you'll see if you look on the ground that it goes directly on top of the ground. You don't want to have floating nav mesh. But when you nav mesh in this, using this method with the collision geometry, it definitely helps you to avoid floating nav meshes. Okay, so let's go right over here to nav mesh stairs. And when you nav mesh stairs, you want them to be, the collision here, this white collision shows the collision on the stairs. You can go to the first stair and then a ramp for the rest is what you want to do. Drag it over so that it's right on the edge, so you can only see pink. You don't want to see the boards underneath. Now if you look at it from the side, you can see that that nav mesh is very clean. The NPCs will have no difficulty whatsoever navigating these stairs. So since this is an area where there is, well, there's a little bit of a lip up there, so we're going to go back to here. Oh, come on. You can use the Z key to drag things up. There we go. And the F to floor it. And that's because there is a tiny lip of collision. See, I caught that line. This is one that I'm going to use the merge function because I dropped a vertice on the line. So I don't want that extra one. Okay. All right. Since Navmesh doesn't necessarily need to go right to the wall because they're not going to be walking on the wall, you can just get it close to the wall because you don't want them to walk through the wall. So you can just do this. Go ahead and Navmesh here. And you can see it's still selected those. Now you can go ahead and drag, oh goodness, Jennifer. Try this one again. Drag the line this way to make gigantic triangles, and that's okay. Because, as I said, you want the triangles to be as big as possible. Okay, so we're going to go inside this door. Come on. Okay. So these stairs are more of a pain than other stairs because they have this turn in the middle and the collision can be wonky. So it's okay. I'll show you how to do that. And by the way, all of the majority of the nav meshing that I have learned from my very good friend Hosa, who is amazing at what he does, which is making models, 3D models, and meshing them, as well as nav meshing his nav mesh fixer. So I've learned a lot of things from him. And he's the one that told me about these stairs because I had trouble getting the NPCs to use them properly. Okay, so these require a little bit more work than regular stairs, and that is because of the fact that they are bending. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to drop the first ones there. We're going to bring it back so that it only shows the You can do directly overhead so you can get it right on that red collision line. Hold the control key down. We're going to drop the next one up here and here. And there. That placement looks pretty good. So next we're going to hop right up here and here. I'm going to fix that a little bit. And then all the way up to the top. Okay, that's still selected. Hold down the control key. Okay, and that is how you nav mesh these particular stairs. They are a little bit more tricky than regular stairs. As you can see, the nav mesh sits directly on top of the stairs, and you don't want, even though it shows in the vanilla, it shows that you can go through underneath a little bit, you really don't want to do that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to show you in this particular location is how to create a pre-cut. I'm just going to drop a vertex in there. Let's see. For, let's say, this bed and this bookcase here. So we're going to put this over here. Let's see. Okay. All right, pretty simple stuff. Going to drop in a vertex. I'm going to drop in another one to catch this particular line. I'm going to drop in one right here. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to merge this one and this one because I don't need that many. So it makes two bigger triangles here. All right. So I'm going to drop in a vertex here. So you can see that breaks that down into a small triangle, and then one here. So I've got two triangles. Let's see, this is a bed. Let's see, I'm going to highlight that one, so you can see they're both green. And I'm going to look, oh, come on, there we go. That's a NPC bed, I believe. Let's see. There we go, it's that one. So what I did was I selected it so you can see it turned green. And I'm just going to go to the nav mesh here and say link precuts for selection. So then you can see it turned pink. So when you want to scrap this particular bed in workshop mode, these two nav mesh triangles will be freed up. We can do the same for this bookcase. Okay, so go a little bit, there we go. I'm going to do what I did last time and merge those two because I don't need those extra vertices. So I'm going to hit Control and Control to select both of those. Goodness, I keep doing the wrong thing. Okay, this I believe is called a Federalist bookcase. Short one. Okay, it's that one. Going to link precuts for selection. So you can see that one's also linked. And you can do that for every single object. This is an ottoman, I believe. And, you know, the desks and stuff like that. But let's say that's all of the nav mesh that I want to do in this particular cell. I'm going to save it or update the cover. And I'm going to finalize this particular cell's nav meshes. And then I'm going to look and see if there's any errors in this particular cell. So check nav meshes. And there are no warnings. I need to load a file that actually has warnings in it to show you how to fix them. So I can save this. So you can see that we walked into the door, came in the door, and we made our 2 pre-cuts. Let's just say that we've cleared out these particular things. We've deleted them from the game, so we're cleaning up an area like when I've done my cleanup mods. We just want to clear out those pre-cuts. We don't want to necessarily remove all of the nav meshing. We can just go to this function and say clear all pre-cut links. And that's an easy way to fix that. Okay, so let's say I want to, here I'm going to load a different file, and I'll be right back to show you how to link cells together. Okay, I'm back again. I'm working in Clean and Simple Warwick Startup ESP. I have done something different with this coming update, and that is that I have removed this tank that was here and the water. This is the catwalk that you can see that was there originally. So what I've done is I've replaced that particular tank with nothing, actually more level ground, and I moved the water purifier over to this cell over to this particular tank here. And this is to improve the usability of this particular settlement. The problem with just using a scrapping mod like Scrap All is that it doesn't actually fix the nav mesh. And I will show you what I'm talking about here. If you link 2 particular nav meshes together, this is a nav mesh here. And then if I do the inverse, you'll see that this is the other nav mesh in this cell. There's actually 3 of them. And you can see that I have re-nav meshed this entire cell, including adding water as well. And the only way that you toggle it is just by hitting that toggle function. The same with the preferred pathing. There was also another one in here, but it is right there. So if you have a nav mesh that you don't want to delete nav meshes, you just make it one triangle and you make it as small as possible, and you put it right next to a collision object. And that way NPCs will not be tempted to use it because A, it's tiny, and B, they'll get knocked right off of it anyway. So they won't use it. Your other option is to drag it underground, which is perfectly acceptable. Okay, so this, don't worry about random vertices. Sometimes it drops them, and it will clean up when you hit the update cover edges. So if you see a bunch of those yellow little vertices dropped in around your edges, don't worry about trying to hand delete every single one of them. Okay, this is the other one. I'm going to make it tiny because I don't want it. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, make it as tiny as possible. And this one I'm going to put over there as well. Come on, grab it. The Z key. All right, here we go. Hit the F key to drop it to the ground. Okay, so there's the other triangle, nice and tiny. Now there is sometimes if you do save one triangle, it still shows up as deleted, and I am going to show you how to fix that right now. It's actually a lot simpler than you would think. So we're going to do that. I have not navmeshed this particular cell. I am working on navmeshing this cell. And it's not the whole cell, it's only the area that's right here because it was a separate nav mesh. So now to get back to, since I am kind of squirreling all over the place with this tutorial, the problem that I was saying with this using scrap everything is that when you want to make an object scrappable in workshop mode, you use the you link the precuts. I haven't linked the precuts on this particular one yet because sometimes when you're in the process and you save it, if you're working on this over multiple days, for some reason it might forget that you've already linked those precuts, and I don't know why it does that sometimes, but I just found that it's far easier to just do that as a last function. So, but there's a bed here, the little boy's bed. There's a bed here. There's a little table here, a bed here, the dresser, and then another bed. And then over on this side, get out of the way, these are 2 chairs and a table and the work stove, and then there's another bed and table and stuff over there. I'm going to do that last, and I'm also going to drop in nav meshing here and link it to the tower so a person can free up this nav meshing as well. But what I was talking about in that method was that, or with using scrap everything, is that it doesn't fix the nav mesh. So as you can see down here with the nav mesh ID, this one is 1F3C9B, and this one is 1002676. Now if I were to make precut links by linking these 2 nav meshes together, it would actually show one of them as deleted. So to avoid that and to still retain the water, I am going to, what I did was remove the whole thing, and skipping around there, stop that. So this one was like the water nav mesh, or this one was the railing nav mesh, and this one was the water nav mesh that was here, and I just make them into one triangle. But since one of these actually showed as deleted, I'm going to show you how to fix that really quick. So I am going to update, and I will finalize, and then I will open it up in Fallout 4 Editor to show you how to fix it the easy way. Let me see here. See, it doesn't show that there's any errors in this one. This file is going to show up with an error when I load it because these are not finalized. And the reason why is I still need to do this nav mesh here. As you can see, Bethesda dropped all these tiny little triangles in here. They're using the auto function, and you can see this nav mesh by hand is clean, regular sized triangles that are easy for the NPCs to navigate. There's a water pump right here, which is why we have some irregular sized ones here. But that's just a small area compared to the rest. Okay, so we're going to apply filter for cleaning. Remove the ITMs. which this has got identical to master things, because I had added those to a layer, but then I removed the layer. Undelete. Okay, contains 3 deleted nav meshes which cannot be undeleted, and that's fine. I'm going to show you how to fix the one. It's in exterior 2. Compressed. Okay, it's this one here. We're going to fix that one right now. I'm going to remove the filter for cleaning, the cleaning filter. Okay, and this is important because I found that when I have the filter on, sometimes it causes this program to crash when I try to do this. So it's this particular one here. So what you want to do is write down this number 0022437C. I'm going to remove this record. Yes. And this is the new one that I created. I'm going to change the form ID, and it's going to be 0022437C. Okay. And you see it turned green. Woot woot. Yes, I'm going to update the records. Okay, I've updated the records. Now I'm going to close it. Okay. It will be saved now. Now I'm going to go and look and see what those other 2 deleted ones are, because there should only have been the one in there. And then I can show you pretty much how to undelete them anyway, and then make them as small as possible. It was probably because I didn't finalize when I was working on it before, which is always important to finalize. So let's see, where is it that shows that it's deleted? Which cell is that? No. Okay. Homestead. Is it this one? No. It's this one here. Let's see. 13 minus 18. This is the cell, and I'll figure out what the problem is with this. Okay, so it's these 2. With this one, the second one, I'm just going to go ahead and remove it. And then I'll fix it in Creation Kit. I'll show you. And this one here, since I have one that I redid, I'm going to go ahead and write down this number and do the same thing I did before. 0049BD3. Yes. It is 0049BD3. Okay, yes, I want to update that. Okay, okay. Yes, I want to save that. I'm going to reload this into Creation Kit. And that was in cell 13 minus 18, and I will figure out what I did there to cause difficulty. Now, when you do this type of method and you reload the file, it will say this particular file has errors in it, and that's fine, just because it wants to actually be loaded into Creation Kit and refinalized. So that error will go away once you do that. Okay. Okay, so what's this cell here? That's fine. Okay, Oh, I know what. Yes, that's because this is the original one here that was, I undeleted it, so that's where it's at. Okay, so that explains it, because I didn't finalize it. So I'm going to just do this. I'm going to drop these to the ground. I'm going to hide these things right up in here. So that way there's no reason in the world that an NPC would try to use this in here. Okay. Okay, I'm going to finalize that. Okay, so, come on, there we go. When I just pushed the finalize button, which finalize that, I'm going to go ahead and do it in this cell so you can see how it works. You just update the cover and then you push the finalize. It will throw errors on this particular cell because of the top of right up here. It's got partial finalizing things because I haven't done this cell, as I said. So if I want to check this cell for errors, it will definitely let me know that that's going to be a problem. So we're going to clear that. And I'm going to check the nav meshes. Yeah, it's going to not argue with me. That's interesting. It should be. Maybe this cell. Come on, come on, come on. Go. Okay. It's trying to make a liar out of me. That's funny. All right then. Well, we'll just move on. Okay, so how to link cells together. That's where I was going. When you nav mesh and you want them to go from one cell to the other, you have to get these vertices lined up. Typically when I nav mesh, I just kind of I get close to it but not on it because I don't want to grab that particular line like I did earlier. Okay, so I want to get these two nav meshes, vertices dragged as close as possible. It's kind of like sewing together. Come on. Okay. Come on, let's go. There we go. Okay, so this is one of those times where there is two smaller triangles, so I'm going to merge these two because there's no reason for them to be there. Same for right here. There's no reason for them to be there. All right, last one. Okay. I might want to put that one back there. And then just make another one here. Okay. So let's say that's all the nav mesh that we wanted to do in that particular cell. We're going to update the cover. And then I'm going to finalize. Okay. I'm going to check for errors. Actually, let me just save that and see where the errors are. That actually will help. Okay, there we go. 1319. So we can go to here, find it. This one is Navmesh 224387. Okay, so this shows where the error is. So I'm going to turn on this so I can see what seems to be the problem. What is the problem here? I see. Right here, there is two, and this is in vanilla, this is not my work. So you can still fix it. Drop in a vertice and drag this one over. Hit F on both of them to try to get them on the same level. And then refinalize. And it looks like there's another error there to the left a little bit. And there we go. Let's see, right here. Well, sometimes, you know, they're not even in your work that you're fixing. Sometimes you're fixing Bethesda's work, which is a pain. All right, so there seems to be something going on here. What is this? All right, let's get this one up here. See, even this is not my work here. There we go. Okay, try again. All right, what else do we got here? Let's clear out the errors again. Save the file. Okay, 13, 18. Warwick Homestead 2. Okay, so let's go to that one. Okay. Right now, let me see. Try this one again. Navmeshing does take a while to fix, especially if you have multiple errors. 2 and okay, now those ones there are due to, those errors there are due to this here, these lines. So we're going to fix those. Okay, I've removed the nav mesh from this particular cell and brought it back to the water. And I actually had to fix this around here because it was sunk beneath the ground. So I'm going to show you how we nav mesh up to those 2 cell borders and connect 4 cells together. So we're just going to follow the contour of the ground. And you nav mesh ramps the same way that you nav mesh stairs, just at the bottom and then again at the top. You don't have to nav mesh all the way up the stairs. Of course, because it's a ramp. Okay, when you get a juncture where there's 4 cells touching, it's nav mesh the same exact way as if it were just 2. There's just 1 vertex in the corner where the 4 meet from each cell. Okay. Well, let's just say that we already nav mesh this entire thing. So when you finalize a cell like this, you do this. It's the same as you do any other finalization. Now we'll check for errors. And there aren't any in this cell, so we're going to go ahead and save and see what errors generate down here, if any. Okay, so these errors are perfectly normal. They I don't have any portals in the cells that I'm editing, so we don't have to worry about those. Okay, so that's how you do that. I'm going to pause the video and load up a different one so I can talk about portals as well as nav meshing objects that you've created. Okay, this is Sanctuary. This is obviously not my mod. It's a mess in here. But the reason I chose this location is because it has a portal here, and I was going to talk to you about that portal thing. So I'm going to turn off the workshop border art. This is the basement there, and it has a portal that you can see if you turn on your markers. It's this yellow object there. So I am going to hide these other things so they're not as visible. Okay, so let's just say I want to move the opening over here somewhere. Okay. I would also have to move the portal marker to be in front of it. Okay, so now let's look at the nav mesh. Okay, this yellow mark right here is actually the nav mesh ID that indicates to an NPC that this is a portal mesh and that they can go inside somewhere. Now, the way that it works is it will pull the nearest triangle and use that. So we're going to put that one here. And we'll drag this one over here. And let's just say that that's all on top of the ground so that, for the sake of this tutorial, because I'm not going to redo this entire mesh. Excuse me. I'm going to turn this off for a second. I realized that I was close to the boundary here, so I'm going to pull this back in and turn that back on. Okay, that's okay. All right, so let's see. There's that one here, and you'll see as I finalize this cell, since this portal is now located on this square will, or this triangle, excuse me, will turn yellow, and this one will go away. Okay, so you can see how it just automatically updates itself. That is what those warnings were that on that other file was just saying that that detected a different location for the portal mesh, so it moved it. Okay, so now talking about nav meshing an object that you have made. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop an item. Let's just say that oh, okay, I know where it's at. I was trying to figure out where that particular one was that I had made for the Magnificent Island, Spectacle Island. Okay. So I'm just going to put that in there. And this is for a workshop item that you have made, and you want to be able to have the NPCs walk on it after you put it down. Oops. Okay, so this is the bridge. I'm just going to pretend that this is a workshop item and add nav meshing to it. So the easiest way, the way that you did it is to just say nav mesh object, and it will open up the cell that you can nav mesh in. Okay, so this box that's around here, you want to make sure that your nav mesh goes to the edge of it, so that, or past the edge of it, so that the, when you do put it on the ground, the NPCs are able to utilize it. Of course, I'm not going to worry about this side. I mean, this is just an example for an object like that you have that like a workshop item for shacks or something, or vendor items. You definitely want to make sure that that is able to connect to the other pieces. So you nav mesh just like you do any other nav meshing. You right click to drop a vertice, and then you hold down the control, right click again, and so on. Now, if you, as you can see, you cannot actually set things as water or preferred pathing on these things, because it's not the way that these work. In this one, it's only for world cells that you can do that in. So what you would want to do is you would want to make sure that it was drug over the edge so that they can use it. Now, they'd only be able to walk here, not over here, unless you were to nav mesh this area as well. And you just do the same thing. Okay, and then you would close the nav mesh and you would save your file. But of course, this is a tutorial, so I'm not going to save that one, but that's how you would do that. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just drop a comment and let me know. Thanks. Bye.